Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third season of Z.D.G Entertainment. Due to the success of our business leadership series, we're now doing a spin-off and bringing on people from all different fields of work. In our first episode of the series, we're bringing on Basel Kayyali as a guest. Basel started his career in engineering and has since worked his way up all the way to senior partner at McKinsey Company. Considering his wide background, we have a lot to talk about this episode. And he'll have a lot of things to teach us. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. We're now with Basel Kayyali, a senior partner at McKinsey & Company who spent over 20 years at the firm. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me, Zach.
We have a lot to unpack. Let's get right into it.
Sounds great.
So to start off, did you always know what you wanted to do? And if you didn't, at what point did you know?
I absolutely did not know. So I graduated from college in 1996 with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. And I took the safe job that would flow directly from that. And I joined Intel. And I got very lucky in that I got a job to help design the Pentium 3 processor. Wow. And for people who are, of this generation, that would be like getting hired by NVIDIA to design the next graphics chip for AI. And it was a $25 billion, $30 billion a year product. Again, this is in the mid-90s. And it was the #1 processor in the world. And it was the most logical thing to work on coming out of an electrical engineering degree. And I started there and I hated the job. Absolutely hated the job. It was very solitary. A lot of the work was you got an assignment, you went off and you thought about it. There was very little mentorship and apprenticeship. This was the creme de la creme of the engineers. So these people, I was the youngest person on the team by about 10 or 20 years. Most folks had already been accomplished. They knew what to do. I was still learning, and they weren't used to having somebody straight out of college like me in the job. So I wasn't growing. I wasn't getting the mentorship that I really, really wanted. And I found it was really hard to relate to my coworkers because, again, most of them were 40, 50 years old, and I was 22 years old, straight out of college. And as an extrovert, that was very hard for me to deal with. And so I switched after that and went into the marketing strategy organization after about a year as an engineer. And I think at that point, I really started to understand what I wanted to do, which was combine the business side with technology and the integration of the two.
So what inspired that change into consulting and marketing?
Yes, absolutely. And that was the big launching point. When I started to do the marketing strategy work at Intel, one of the things I learned was it accomplished many of the things that I didn't like about the engineering role. So the group was younger. I was getting a lot more apprenticeship, a lot more coaching, and I was really working with on cool topics, and it was very interactive, right? It played well to my extrovertedness. And so I did that job for about 2 years, worked with folks like Dennis Carter, who invented Intel Inside. There's business cases from Harvard Business School written about him and that work, and learned a ton from him. But like Dennis, everybody in that organization had an MBA. And it was very clear that it would be very hard to advance and become more senior in that organization unless you got an MBA. And so that's when I made the decision about 3 years after undergraduate to go get my MBA. And I was lucky enough to get into the Wharton School and enrolled there and got my MBA. And that was in 2000.
So a lot of people might not know what McKinsey is or what consulting is. Could you give a brief explanation of what McKinsey does and definition of consulting?
Yeah, absolutely. So McKinsey is, consulting is a very big category. There are a lot of firms, and it's a very broad industry. McKinsey tends to play in what they call the management consulting space, segment of consulting. And the way you should think about this is we tend to partner with our clients on solving their business problems. So it may be, how do I unlock growth? How do I get my cost in line with, the revised growth trajectory of the company, et cetera? And typically what we do is we solve the toughest problems of our clients in partnership with them, working side by side. And, when I started 22 years ago, we did a lot of what I would say PowerPoint. So we cracked the problem and we helped with the client team, the executives at the client, define how to go about solving the problem. But increasingly over the course of my 22 years, our clients are pushing us to actually help them also then go execute the problem. And so the biggest change I've seen in the industry in the last 22 years is the duration of our work has gotten longer. The nature of our partnerships with our clients have gotten deeper. And we're now translating the strategy, which we co-create with them, into the business impact that was intended to have with it. And that's the simplest way to describe what we do.
So you said you've been there for over 22 years. So you've seen it all different kinds of projects. Which project specifically has been the most rewarding?
It's a great question, but it's a really tough one to answer. And it probably isn't any individual project, but maybe a client, which is there's a software client I've had the privilege of partnering with for about 13 years.
Wow.
I started 13 years ago in 2011 when they announced a new CEO. And the first project we did was one of the big CEO's initiatives was to make their software development even more efficient and effective. He realized the basis of competition was increasing and that they were falling behind. And so we worked on their software development productivity. And over the course of those 11 years, we helped shape his agenda. We helped do a wide range of projects, all that were top of mind. And in those 11 years, the market cap of the company went from 20 billion to 100 billion.
Oh, wow.
It went 5x, about twice the increase of the S&P 500. And you could see obviously the management team deserves most of the credit, but there was a lot of the work that we did. You can draw a straight line between that and at least a portion of the stock price appreciation. And that was just incredibly gratifying to watch that and be along on that ride along with our client partners.
That's amazing. 20 billion to 100 billion, 5 times growth. So you told us the most rewarding. Which one has been most challenging?
Sometimes you have clients that you don't gel with or teams that you don't gel with. And what I've learned is, in my 22 years is a lot of what you think going into a project is going to be exciting based on the content and the industry and the problem actually ends up not being as exciting as you initially thought. And the reason is it's the people. The people you work with. Either the client team and the McKinsey team is not gelling, or the McKinsey team itself is not gelling. And so a lot of my least favorite studies and projects at McKinsey have been interpersonal in nature. Is for some reason the client and you are not gelling very well. You're not able to influence them to get to kind of the full potential of the recommendations you're making, or there's a tense relationship, and 9 times out of 10 you're able to turn it around, over the course of a project or a program. But there's going to always be a handful of them that you didn't succeed, and you just have to be willing to at that point make the best of what you can, and elegantly back away or create space for somebody else to kind of step in who maybe gels a bit better with the client. And that could be me, it could be another individual on the team, etc.
When going into companies, do you feel sometimes when there are issues that it's more so a management problem or the employee's problem?
It depends a lot. It's usually a combination of the two.
Combination of the two?
Yes. In some cases, it's, where the tension and the friction happens, management can be, vacillating between what they want, right? And if the problem statement is constantly changing, it's hard to solve it for them. And that definitely tends to happen in a handful, not often, but it can happen. And some of those pivots are very good because it's based on what you found and you realize the problem you're solving is not the right problem. There's actually a deeper problem. But sometimes it's because of recency bias or a lack of clarity. And that's an issue that you sometimes see with the management team. The teams themselves, what you see is most of our clients are pretty capable. They hand select the people we work with, and they tend to be the best and brightest. So they're typically very capable, but they may not have a high, what we call will. They may not be excited about the work. You can imagine, a good example with this would be, we've definitely had clients that are in a tough spot. There is real cost pressure that you have to resolve, and nobody enjoys cutting costs. And sometimes, you'll encounter at the working team level folks that are not inspired, don't understand the reason why they need to do it. And, you really have to work to kind of raise their energy and their will, if you will, to do the work.
This transitions us well into our next question. I like to ask this to a lot of my guests. In your definition, what's the difference between a manager and a leader?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a leader, to me, there's two big markers for a leader. A leader takes initiative. He or she sees an opportunity and they take the first step to go seize that opportunity. And a leader raises the aspiration of the team and the organization. So he or she sets very high goals for the team. A manager executes. So a manager helps ensure he executes or she executes other people's initiatives and against other people's aspirations. And that, to me, is the biggest difference between the two.
Would you say it's possible to be both?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So lastly, to end it off, what advice do you have for someone who would like to go into consulting?
It's a great question. 3 pieces of advice. I think one is, know what segment within consulting you want to do. 2 is do well in school and take real leadership. We were talking about your recent leadership appointment. I think that stuff is great. And 3 is get to know the firm or the company you're interviewing with. So on the first, the segment of the consulting firm, we talked about management consulting. That's predominantly what a company like McKinsey, BCG, or Bain does. That's a little bit different than system integrating consultants like an Accenture or Deloitte that do long technology-oriented implementations like an SAP transition or deployment of Workday or something like that. So that's those are 2 very different types of consulting subsegments. And there's a third, there's a lot of boutiques out there that really specialize in a specific industry or in a specific function. So there are a lot of consulting firms that just do pricing in life sciences, as an example. And it's important for you to know which of those 3 are right for you and why. And there's no right answer. It's going to be based on your own preferences. 2 is the academics and the leadership. The academics is, at the end of the day, all consulting, all those 3, you're solving the toughest problems at the client. The type of problem may differ based on the consulting subsegment, but it's still a problem. And so academic good grades and achievement signals to the firm that you're capable of solving problems. I mean, what is an engineer? I was an engineer undergraduate. It's problem solving. It's all
and then you switched
you switched to
changed career, became successful.
That's right. And then leadership is important because to your question, a leader versus manager is you have to be able to raise the aspiration of the client team. You have to be able to see and take initiative. And they're going to want to see examples from your extracurricular activities, if you will, that show that you are willing to be a leader and take the initiative to be a leader. And then the third is know the firm. I think the big thing is even within management consulting, McKinsey has a different culture than BCG, which has a different culture than Bain. And it's not that different than applying to college, which is probably more top of mind for you all right now. Every school is a little bit different. And what they want to see in the essays when you apply to a college is that you know the school and that you're going to contribute to the community and be additive. consulting firms are no different. They want to see in the interviews that you know them, you know what's unique about them, and you have a compelling reason for why you want to join them. So those would be my 3 pieces of advice.
All right. Thank you for coming on. It was
My
a pleasure. I bet our audience learned a lot today. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to tune into our next episode.